Good morning. We'll move on to the next session. Previous class we have discussed what is HTTP, what is HTML, what is XML, difference between HTML and XML, all those things. Those things are prime things to use internet. Those things are basic knowledge about web page and website. Now we'll move on to the next topic, that is domain names. Before entering into this topic, you just understand one important concept. Let me say one real-time example. By using that example, let me explain this concept domain names. First of all, if I need to contact you or if I need to speak with you people, like let me consider 3 or 4 members like Vibhushana, Avanya, Sridhar, Siddharth. I want to speak with all these guys. How can I speak? By using their mobile numbers, I can call to them and I can speak with them. Is it possible to remember their mobile numbers forever? No, it's not possible. So what I'll be doing, I'll be getting their numbers and I'll be storing their numbers with their names. So by seeing their names, I'll be identifying their numbers and I'll be maintaining a database with the name and phone number. I'll be using only the names. Automatically from the database the respective phone numbers will be taken and I'll be using that phone numbers and I'll be calling to them. This is the concept I'll be using to call everybody and I'll be using to speak with everybody. The same concept only. Now we'll come to the concept of domain names. In our computer, if you're coming to the concept of internet, how many computers will be connected with the internet? Can anyone say? Yeah, right. We'll have n number of systems will be connected with the internet. So we cannot identify or we cannot remember all the system IP address. Actually, each and every computer will have separate IP address. With the help of that IP address only, our communication will be happening inside our network. That is the real fact. Like with the help of phone numbers only, I can contact and I can speak with each and everybody. Similar to that, with the help of computers IP address only, we can speak we can communicate with each and every computer. Is it possible to remember all the phone numbers? No, it's impossible. Similarly, is it possible to remember the IP address? No. IP address will be like phone numbers only. So it's impossible to remember all the IP address which is connected with our computer. So what I'll be doing, instead of remembering the IP address, will be going for the new thing that is called domain name. Just look at this definition. Communicating with computer on internet using IP address is practically impossible, as it is very difficult to remember IP address of each and every computer or a website. System has been developed to assign names to IP address. Similar to names to mobile number, we are assigning names to IP address and maintains a database of these names corresponding to IP address. Now we'll have contact list. In that contact list, we'll have names to the corresponding phone number similar to that. These names are referred as domain name. According to our contact list, we'll be saying that names will be called as contact name, but here domain name. Example will have cbse.nic.gmail.com. These things will be called as domain name. Actually, domain name will be used along with the URL to identify a particular web service. URL stands for Uniform Resource Locator. Each and every URL will have domain names. Domain name will have more than one part. One is top level domain name, that is called primary domain name. Another one is subdomain names. So each and every domain name will have more than one part, primary domain name and subdomain names. For example, if you are taking cbse.nic.in, the primary domain in this is .in, and then subdomain is NIC. So NIC is a subdomain of IN. So primary domain is IN and then a subdomain is NIC. Similarly, if you are coming for cbsc.nic, NIC is the main domain, that is primary domain, that subdomain is CBSC. So each and every domain name will have two parts, that is more than one part, that is primary domain name and subdomain names. See, the generic domain names which we are using is .com, .edu, .gov. Actually, .com is for commercial business, a website which is designed or which is developed for commercial purpose will go for .com. If it is educational institutes, will use .edu. If it is government related agencies, will use .gov. If it is related to network organizations, will use .net. And then if it is non-profit organizations, will use .org. These are generic domain names. And then if it is country specific domain names are .in for India, .au for Australia, .ca for Canada, .ch for China, .nz for New Zealand, for .pk for Pakistan. This is country specific domain names. See, apart from that, we'll have a number of subdomains to access a particular thing. If you are seeing an URL at www.cbsc.nic.in, along with that www.cbsc.nic.in, if you are seeing, that entire term will be called as URL. In that URL, cbsc.nic.in is a domain name which will be used to identify a particular IP address or a website or a web server. That is called domain names. I hope you will be understanding what is domain name. Now we'll move on to the next topic, URL. URL stands for Uniform Resource Locator. This we have seen already. Each website has unique address called URL. Look at the example, http://www.cbsc.nic.in. The basic format of URL is initially will have a protocol, that is type. HTTP is our type. After that, address. Address is www.cbsc.nic.in/path. Path will be given. Look at this URL which is given down. For example, it is given now http://www.cbscacademics.nic.in/index.html. Look at this example. In this, http will be considered as type. Type means type of server or protocol. Next one is www.cbscacademics.nic.in. that is called address of the server. Each and every server will have separate address. Now this www.cbscacademics.nic.in is the address of the server, and then path is, after that you will have /index.html, that is path of the CBSE academics website. So I hope you'll be understanding. This is called URL. URL will have basic format like type : address/path. See, here HTTP protocol, it may be FTP, Gopher or any other protocols also will be placed depending upon the URL. I hope you will be understanding what is URL. Now next we'll move on to the next topic, that is website. Website is a collection of web pages. Everyone knows. See, your homework is you want to write any 10 website names. Similarly, you want to write any 10 URLs with all these basic format segregation. You want to write the URL and you want to mention what is the type of the server, what is the address of the server, and what is the path. The 10 website URL, you should write the basic formats, all those classification. Now we'll move on to the next website, that is your homework. Now we'll move on to the next concept, website. Website is a collection of web pages uh, it will be identified by common domain name and published on at least one web server. For example, google.com, youtube.com, all publicly accessible websites collectively constitute the World Wide Web. Website is broadly of two types. One is static website, another one is dynamic website. Static website is used to display the information without any interaction with the user, or a web server will not have any user interaction. But dynamic website is it which will allows user to interact with the website, and it can communicate with the web server, and will be again and again will be it will be asking question, will be answering, it will be in such a form. If it will be understanding what is website, what is URL, domain names. Let me say one more example for website. If you are taking our website www.https://rd.school, that is our school website. We have a separate server in our for our school website. We'll be uploading all the content in that web server. We'll be creating separate pages, and we'll be uploading, and we'll be accessing our website. Google.com is also one of the website. YouTube.com is also one of the website. It can be accessible with the help of our World Wide Web. So website is collection of web pages related to a content that is identified by common domain name and published on at least one web server. Website can be classified into two types. One is static website and dynamic website. A website without any user interaction, then that will be called as static. A website with user interaction will be called as dynamic website. Now we'll move on to the next topic, web browser. Web browser, without web browser we cannot access any web page. So web browser is a software application for accessing information on World Wide Web. Web browser acts as a client to send requests to the server. Once the server processes the request and returns the response, the same will be displayed on the web browser. So without web browser we cannot access any web page or website. So web browser will be the client side software to access a particular web server. So you just imagine, if I want to access rd.school website, that website will be present in a web server. How can I communicate with that web server? With the help of web browser only I can communicate with the web server. So I'll be launching any web browser like Google Chrome or Firefox or Opera or UZ browser or some other browser will be launching, and will be entering the URL in that web browser, and then that web browser will be sending request to the server, and server will process the request and it will be responding, and that response will be displayed on the again to the web browser. So these are the common steps we'll be using for accessing a web server. So without web browser we cannot do any process or any communication with the web server. Common web browsers are, what are the web browsers we are using, like Google Chrome, Mozilla Firefox, Opera, Netscape Navigator, Internet Explorer, UC browser. All those will be a web browser. It is a client side software. Most of the web browser supports graphical support. Linux is the text-based web browser. Text-based web browser, if you are saying any one example, Linux. Next topic is web server. I hope you will be understanding what is web browser. Next topic, we'll move on to the next topic, that is web servers. Just now we have discussed what is web browser and all those things. Next topic is web server. It is very important. Without web server we cannot do any action inside the web page. Actually, web server is a computer that runs the website. Inside that web server only, see, look, just imagine I need to store any information in my computer. We have a hard disk and we'll be storing, and without hard disk we cannot store any data permanently and we cannot access. Similar to that, Web server is a computer that runs website. In the sense, in that computer, our web page content will be stored. And whenever we want to access that, we'll be calling it and we'll be storing it. That is the fact that is happening. Yeah, that's the thing happening. The basic objective of this web server is it will be storing and it will be processing. Whenever we are user is accessing something, it will be delivering those things to the user. So web server and client communicate with the help of a protocol called HTTP. Already we have discussed this. Whenever any request is given by the browser, that is our client, immediately our request will be taken and it will be processing by the web server and it will be responding through again web browser. When web server returns the request page to the client with the response code like 404, it requests if requested page not found. Whenever if you are requesting any content, if that request content is not present in the web server, that web server will be producing 404 if request not page not found. This will be displaying whenever if there is no web browser web page content, web server content, and then or either it will be displaying 404 or 200 if requested page if sorry 404 for requested page not found and 200 for requested page found. So any one of the response code will be reaching to the client. By getting that code only, our client will be understanding whether requested information is present in the web server or not. So web server is a computer that runs websites. It's a computer program that distributes web pages as they are requested. Basic objective of web server is to store, process and deliver web pages to the user. When web server and client communicate with the help of HTTP protocol and web server returns 404 to the client if requested page not found, and it will be returning 200 if the requested page found. Don't get confused of any like anything else. Web server is like our hard disk. Whenever we want to store the data permanently, we'll be storing the data in our hard disk. Similarly, we'll be storing inside our web server. If it is stored in a hard disk, it can be accessed only in a local computer, but if it is stored in a web server, it can be accessed throughout the world. So will inside that web server will be storing our websites, our web pages, and it will be accessing throughout the world. So that's all about today's session. We have discussed about domain names, what is domain, what is IP address, what is URL, what are the general specific domain names, country specific domain names, and then what are the basic formats of URL, website, how that website will be, what is website, what are the classification of website, and next we have discussed about what is web browser, and then what are the different web browser, and we have discussed about web servers. That's all today's topic. Next class will continue with the next topic, web hosting. Before that, you have to be very clear with these 5 important topics. It is very important. That's the reason I did not go in like very fast. I explained you very slowly. These topics are very important because without internet we cannot do anything in our world. So if we need to use internet, web browser, web server, URL, domain names, those things are very important. That's the reason I have explained very slowly. We just imagine web browser is a client side software, web server is a place where we'll be storing all the data to access a particular website. Domain name is like a name using for accessing a particular computer. URL is used to access a particular web server. I hope you will be understanding all these topics and web server, all those. Next web hosting topic we'll be seeing in next class. Thank you.